and welcome back to the Colour Wheel Garden YouTube channel. A big warm welcome to people who've already subscribed and to new people who've arrived to the channel. I hope you enjoy the content I share with you, and if you haven't already, click the subscribe button so I can share more wonderful seasonal sustainable floral creations, garden tours, tips and tricks and more. Now for today I'm going to share with you a full floral demonstration on how to make this lovely spring seasonal sustainable floral creation using things that you have in your own garden. And I assure you, even if you think you have the most sparse garden, you will be able to make something like this from what you have in your own garden. So get your pen and paper ready, maybe get a glass of wine or something to relax with, and follow along and have a lovely time making something that you know has come from your own garden or from a local grower, hasn't been imported, hasn't been dunked in chemicals, and has no floral foam. So settle in and let's get started. So what we're starting off with is a large bowl, but of course you could use a smaller bowl and scale this down. I've filled this up with water, and we need to have mechanics to stop our stems from flopping over. If I take a stem here of spirea and I pop it in that bowl without any mechanics, something to hold it upright, it will fall to the side or even potentially fall out, and it would take so many more stems to fill this vase, which would constantly be tumbling out. It would be a nightmare. So that is why a lot of florists use floral foam, which is basically like a brick that you can insert stems in, but it is terrible for the environment. It's full of plastic that doesn't break down, and it's just a nightmare. Whereas you can actually use stuff from your own garden. You could, if you wanted, use something like chicken wire to create kind of creases and little holes for your stems to slot in. But something even more sustainable is to use a plant. So here I am using hebe, and I'm kind of creating what I call nesting foliage. So we just saw that spirea a minute ago flop out of the side of the vase, whereas I just take a bunch of hebe and make sure I've got it facing all the correct way and just literally slot it in. This is now a replacement for my floral foam, and it's brilliant because better than floral foam, it doesn't matter if a little bit of it's exposed because it's obviously plant material, and it can all go straight into the compost bin without harming the environment. It's so much more sustainable, and of course you can use whatever you have in your own garden to make it seasonal to you. And now if we take that same stem of spirea and slot it in, it stays upright, just in the same way that you would get with floral foam, but of course we've not had to use something man-made that's imported and filled with plastics. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some upright foliage to kind of create a framework. So if you think we've used our hebe as our nesting foliage to hold our stems in place instead of using floral foam, now what I'm doing is I'm getting some upright stems to kind of create the shape of the arrangement. Now what's facing you will be the back, so you've got a couple of options here. What you can do is do something taller at the back, tapering forward at the front, which is what I'm going to do today. Or you could do it all in one round where it's all identical and symmetrical, or you could do it asymmetrical where you have one side taller than the other. This is where you get to play around with what you have in your own garden and what you enjoy shape-wise, and have a think about where you're going to be placing this. If you're going to be placing this in the center of the room, it's likely that you're going to want something that looks good from all sides. If you're going to be placing it on a mantle, you're going to really want the back to potentially be taller and the front to be shorter. So just have a play around, have an experiment. But this is where you could look at your own garden and say, well, I don't have hebe, so you could use something like sedum or some low growing foliage. Think of anything that's got quite a denseness to it, or even just get more stems like your spirea here and cut them shorter to create your nesting foliage. Now all I've done here is I've taken some tall stems of spirea to create a kind of framework. I've started off making them taller at the back and shorter at the front. I'm just going to pull this one out here because it's too tall for my liking there. And so you can see this will be my back and this will be my front. And now I'm going to take some more spirea and start filling in those front stems, but it's super quick. So what you could use in your own garden, maybe you've got something like privet, which is a really easy evergreen foliage that grows upright and gives very thin stems like this spirea, and you could use as your framework foliage. Or maybe you've got something a bit more chunky and dense like laurel. Have a look in your garden, even if you have to pause this video and come back to it, just have a gander and have a think, what could I use that could be really dense? It could be the same material cut shorter. What could I use that's really tall that can support my shape and give me that framework? You will find something, and if you don't, I'm sure there's a lovely neighbour nearby that you could potentially ask if you could take a few stems, or you could always, of course, go to a local flower grower and ask them for some foliage and purchase them off them. But this is such a quick way, and already from just greenery, you've got no mechanics that are unbiodegradable. It's all sustainable, and a wonderful framework with this spirea. This is just common spirea. It grows very easily. In fact, it spreads via runners under the ground. So this is a great way to use any plant material that's shooting up where you don't want it to be. Now what I'm going to go in with is what I would call a lace, and what a lot of people would call a lace. It's basically just a frothy flower. So here I've got a wonderful plant called Pulmonium. Isn't that so beautiful and delicate? Now, lace flowers, normally you'd consider them to be like a lace cap, like almost like a little umbrella for umbrella shape. So something like Ammi Majus or cow parsley or honesty would come under that camp. But of course you can look out for other things that are a bit more open and delicate, that aren't quite lace but fill in the same space of it, like this Pulmonium. And all I'm going to do, let me move that out of the way before it gets knocked over, is I'm going to start just inserting a few stems down the middle. Now, if you've got more greenery than you have flowers, this is a great creation to make, because you don't have to use a lot. You can just take a few sprigs here and there. I'm only using 3 stems of this Pulmonium. That's it. Just to add a little delicate kiss of lilac. And how I'm placing them is across a diagonal. I almost want to have a little river of lilac and blue running through the middle, and then I'm going to place either side my focal flowers. But this is kind of a bit like how you might play around with garden design. So you can, of course, I'm going to go in with some forget-me-nots now at the front. You can, of course, place everything identically symmetrical to one another, or you can again play around and make it asymmetrical. Or what I like to do is, because I like to take inspiration from gardens and Mother Nature, is I like to plant almost as if I was doing it, plant, you see, I like to place in the same way that I might place plants in the garden. So it always looks better. Oh, someone's doing some woodwork, one of my neighbours. I hope you can hear me. It always looks better if you plant things in drifts or in swathes. So rather than having like a dot of a plant here and a dot of a plant there, if you put 3 plants together in your garden, it'll create a lovely swathe. I'm so sorry about the noise, but obviously I live in a terraced house and a terraced garden, and we all have to share the space, and I'm probably disturbing them. Now I'm going to add some lovely stocks that I've had growing in my greenhouse, and again I'm going to just put them down that diagonal through the middle, just to continue with that river. Obviously, if you can't hear me at this point, just put on some captions and you should be able to hear me. And just have a look. With a few forget-me-nots, a few Pulmonium and a few stocks, we've started to create that kiss of lilac running through the middle of our creation. But of course you can use what you have in your own garden with similar shapes, or your neighbours if you ask with permission, and of course they say yes. Now I'm going to move on to get some other flowers. So here I've got some honesty, and I'm going to be honest about my honesty. I've used it already in creation, so it's a little ropey, but I must admit, if you can see, it's just starting to form. Can you see those little seed pods where they look like, let me get it closer for you. little discs like that, and they would normally on the plant turn into beautiful moon-shaped discs, which are the most fantastic ingredients for dried Christmas creations. They have these wonderful silver discs, and I must admit, I love honesty at all stages. I love it when it's in flower, I love it when it's in seed pods, and I love it when it's in this kind of in-betweeny stage too. So I'm just going to continue echoing down that kind of river running through the middle of this creation, and all the while you could be thinking about what you have in your own garden. So maybe you have some viburnum, maybe you do have some honesty but it's the white variety, maybe you have some spirea, maybe you have a hebe that's actually in flower. Start looking at what you have in a slightly different light, and you don't have to take a lot. I'm only taking a few stems of each plant, so it's not going to really take away from the garden too much. But a few stems here and there really make a difference. But if you really are struggling, of course you can go to a wonderful local flower grower and get flowers from them too. Oh, the noise has stopped, so hopefully you can hear me. Now I'm going in with these glorious daffodils. Now, these daffodils are a variety called Ice King, and look how glorious they are. They are so soft and pretty and lovely. Now, these would normally come out in early March, but I actually planted some very optimistically at the end of January. No, sorry, the beginning of January. And I thought they'll never come up, but they've got one of two chances. And sure enough, come up they did, and they've come up now. So I've had one succession of my original Ice King daffodils that I had at the beginning of March, and then I've had my new ones, which have come out now. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to echo behind that river with what I'm going to do is put a clump here and a clump there, because I'm thinking about planting in a garden and how I love things to be in drifts and in clumps. So for me that looks really like it's a scooped up piece of the garden coming inside to the house. But you might prefer things to look less natural, less garden designy, and you might prefer to do things where it's completely even, so you put one daffodil there and one on the exact opposite side and repeat going onwards and onwards. But like I say, my style, even though I love bold colour in terms of my hair and wearing things, I actually really love a natural, calming, almost garden design inspired floral creation, because it literally feels like I've brought a piece of the garden inside the house. And for me, that is what makes me feel so joyous when it's a wet, miserable day, or just when maybe you're stuck inside working, whatever it might be, and you can just have that on your desk, by your bedside table, and it just kind of keeps you connected to the outside even when you're on the inside. So I've put a clump here at this top left corner, and now, like I say, as if I was doing garden design, I'm going to do a drift here just at the front. So I'm going to continue to insert these lovely, beautiful daffodils. Now again, you can use whatever you have in your garden. You might have some daffodils, you might have some tulips, you might have a lovely odd trailing clematis that you could afford to take one or two stems from. You don't have to use all of it. You could take 2 or 3 stems from one plant, 2 or 3 stems from another plant, so you don't have to completely wreck what's in your garden. And as we get later on in the year and we start using more annuals, they are cut and come again. So the more you cut, the more you get, which is even better. So actually, when you grow annuals, and biennials too, some of them, the more you pick them, not only are you actually getting wonderful plants for your house, but you're also getting even more blooms for the garden too. Now just look at that. How pretty do those colours look against each other? The soft lilac and that soft buttercream yellow is such a calming colour combination. And like I say, you don't have to go with a garden design. You could do them dotted evenly on both sides. You can make this asymmetrical, however you want. But for me, I love a garden design. I really want it to look like I've just scooped up a part of the border and brought it inside. And I'm going to just finish off with some tulips. Now again, like I say, I'm in the middle of a challenge. I'm making a floral creation every single day for an entire year using ingredients I have grown or foraged with permission, nothing imported. I never use imported blooms. And it's to prove that there is something seasonal to be celebrated at any time of the year. So because I am making a creation every single day, I do occasionally use my ingredients for being able to keep up with that challenge. And these tulips are one of those ingredients. So they are a little bit on their last legs, which is why they're kind of gone a greyishy colour, but they still are so beautiful. I've had a few just start to cascade their petals, but not too many. And all I'm doing is, again, just carrying on with that rhythm. I've just put a few in here at the back. And you might think you can't see them too well from the back, but actually it's really important that you do add things at the back, because what it does is it gives depth and volume. If I just focus completely on the front, which you can see, it would look a little bit sparse, not voluptuous enough, and we want something to look voluptuous and take up space and look glorious. And I'm just going to add a few to the side, just again underneath those daffodils at the front, to make it continue with that garden design of swathes and repetition. And then the final ingredient, and again, think about what you have in your own garden. You can of course copy this identically, or you can use what you have in your own garden and play around with different colour schemes. But lastly, I'm going to go in with some spirea. Now, even though I've been keeping up with this drifts going on the diagonals here, I don't want it to look too diagonally, so I'm actually going to go the opposite way with the spirea. Oh, we've got motorcycles now on the main road. And I'm just going to insert a few stems, going the opposite way, cutting through, almost like in a garden design, how you might have 3 standout trees and then you're planting underneath. And look at that. That is seasonal, sustainable, spring floral creation gloriousness that just brings a bit of calm and joy, and you can totally achieve it with the ingredients you have in your garden. Or if you really don't want to do it, like I say, get in touch with a wonderful local flower grower, because there's so many. Now, I hope you appreciate a lot of effort goes into these videos with my garden tours, my floral demonstrations, my tips and tricks. So I really appreciate it. To everybody who's already bought me a coffee, a huge thank you. It makes such a difference. And if you'd like to also, there is a link in my bio where you can purchase me a coffee, and all that does is just helps with my plant fund, my learning fund, and of course my incentive to carry on, because of these demonstrations, these garden tours do take a lot of time, but I want to do as much as possible to share that it's totally possible to have wonderful seasonal sustainable flowers at any time of the year that you can enjoy. So I hope you've enjoyed it, and again, thank you very much. TTFN, it's ta for now.